Hi. Welcome to Book Pop.
I'm Molly Fish.
And I'm Jamie Anderson.
And this week we're going to be talking about banned books because September 22nd through September 28th is Banned Book Week in the U.S., where we don't celebrate banning books, but we bring awareness to book bans and talk about the importance of fighting them. And we help raise awareness of and celebrate titles that have been banned to try and help promote those authors and offer them support so that readers can find their stories, even if they're taken out of school libraries and public libraries. So yeah, we're going to be getting into banned books, and we each read a banned book for this episode that we will be talking about. We've not discussed that yet with each other offline, so I'm excited to hear your take.
Well, we have lots to catch up on.
I know, we haven't seen each other in like 3 days. So before we talk about banned books, we just have to catch up a little.
Yeah. How was your weekend?
It was good. I worked Saturday, obviously, but it was pretty slow because of the Badger game.
Oh my gosh. I had to bring my nephew downtown.
No.
Yeah. He called me on his way. They were going to get an Uber and it was $70.
Yeah, that's bad.
But Auntie's free. So he called on his way and
It's
he's
only
like,
2 hours of your time.
It was a minute. But I got like to the west side of the Capitol and I was like, you can walk from here.
Right?
Because it was dense.
It was dense, but not so much right around the Capitol where normally Saturdays would be very concentrated. The whole farmer's market was really slow. But we were here and hanging out. It was still a fun day at the store as usual. Beautiful weather. Yesterday I went to get breakfast with my nieces and my sister who were in town.
Oh, fun.
And then I also went out to Paoli, to the mill.
I love Paoli.
Have you? So you must be. I figure you would know about this. I've
Yes.
never heard of the mill.
This ring is from the. No, this one. This ring is from like the jewelry, one of the jewelry stores there.
Yeah, there was a really cute there are a bunch of little shops.
And
And
I lost this for like a week, and I was like, I need to go back to Paoli because I love this ring. I love
Was it like the tiny shop that's right? Like I said,
They're all tiny.
They're all tiny, and they're all right there.
And they're all cute.
But there was like a little beer garden and it was the mill was like the venue where there's like this big stage behind. There's like a hop house, but then there were all these vendors set up there of like selling cookies or Thai food in like little tents, and it was super fun.
That must have been like some special event or some market.
Well,
that
no, they
did.
said every weekend is like this.
Oh.
Saturdays and Sundays in the summer, they have bands, like 2 bands a day.
Okay.
And my friend Claire's band, Big Tooth, her bluegrass band, shout out to Big Tooth.
Big Tooth.
They were playing, and I had never seen them. So we had other friends in town, and we all met there. And I was like, I can't believe I've never been here before. This is such a cool experience.
Yeah.
It was very hot.
Yeah.
I will say that. I was like, I'm ready to be out here in a sweater and be drinking beer in a beautiful beer garden type scenario, but I'm not. I'm over the sweating at a beer garden vibe. I'm over it. I'm ready for it to be
September. Like, why is it 88 degrees?
Past what day? I don't even know what day it is, but it's mid-September at the earliest.
Yeah.
Like it is into mid to late September, people. So anyway, but it was still really fun. We had a great time hanging out at the mill in Paoli.
Did you go to 7 Acres and get ice cream?
No, because I'm lactose intolerant.
Shit. Oh, yeah, this is something
And
I do.
everybody was pointing at the dairy and talking
no.
about the dairy and how great the dairy is. And I was like, I'm sure. And I would probably die if I went there. They also got like cheese curds for the table. And I was like, cool, I'm on my own, I guess, you guys. It's a lonely life for a lactose intolerant person in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But it was a really beautiful, like state-of-the-art looking dairy right across the creek from the place we were. So I'm sure it's great.
Sure, it's great. Of course, I'm going to bring up ice cream, though. I mean,
yeah,
that's all I think about.
It's your favorite thing.
That's all I think about.
So I did that yesterday, and now we're all caught up.
Nice.
And you were working.
I was working yesterday. What did I do on Saturday, other than give my nephew a ride?
I saw something on Instagram.
Oh, that was when we went to the petting zoo, when we went to the apple orchard.
The apple orchard. Oh, okay.
And Jacob was hilarious because he's like, my 18-year-old son has to go to the petting zoo.
Okay, I'm 38 and I have to go to the petting zoo if I'm at an apple orchard, so no judgment.
No. I'm glad he did say something because there was the cutest little potbelly pig and the goats were super friendly. And then there was this donkey that was like nudging his way in to get all the food from us.
What apple orchard was it?
We went to Sky High. It's in Baraboo.
Okay,
It's super busy on the weekends, but if you get there on a weekday, it's super chill.
nice.
And they always have fresh cider on Wednesdays.
Okay.
It's a good day to go. And that is where the apple that I had this morning came from. It was a beautiful Honeycrisp, delicious, juicy apple.
Locally
I
grown.
love fall in Wisconsin.
If only it would be fall in Wisconsin.
Right.
But yes,
And then we also went to our favorite meat market. That was our Saturday.
nice.
Because meat at the grocery store in Madison is so expensive and it's gray all the time. It's just gross.
I know. I've been noticing that recently.
Yeah. So we're spoiled going, I don't know, it's like an hour drive out of the way. Totally worth it.
You're going to say what it is?
Oh, did I not? Leroy's in Fox Lake. They also have a location in Horicon, but
I think you said it to me earlier,
oh, my bad.
but you didn't say this.
Well, you know my meat market.
Yeah, I know that it's Leroy.
I talk about my meat market all the time.
I know. I'm so jealous.
Okay, but we need to talk about my work anniversary.
Yes.
If you've been following along on Instagram, I celebrated my 1-year anniversary working for Lake City Books on September 6th.
Mm-hmm.
And we went out to celebrate.
This was a fun mistake. Only a mistake in that Friday nights are like I'm supposed to rest up. I work early on Saturdays. I had a big show Saturday night the next night, but then we decided to go on a bar crawl basically on a Friday night.
Little neighborhood walk around.
It was fabulous though.
It was great. Sipping cocktails and having appetizers. First stop was Draper Brothers Trap House.
Yep, this was my big surprise, quote unquote, for Jamie because like we would never feel like we could afford to go to Draper Brothers. And so I was like, ooh, we're going to start somewhere that you won't
Ever go
to. Just to make it special too. And just like we could both go there for the first time and see it and
yes,
have a good special occasion. So we started there first, had cocktails at the bar. There's no one in there yet, so it was very private.
and shrimp cocktail.
And a shrimp cocktail. It was a fabulous shrimp cocktail.
Yes, it was very good. The horseradish and the cocktail sauce.
Yeah.
So good.
Just classic and perfect and very fresh. And
Yeah. But that's all we had there.
yeah. And then I was like, don't get too comfortable. I'm not treating you at Draper Brothers for the full meal. Maybe at like year 5 for work anniversary, we do the full steak dinner at Draper.
Then I will have earned a steak.
You will have earned the whole Draper.
Fair enough. I'll earn my keep. But we didn't go too much lower.
Oh, no.
In fact, we went up to the 10th floor
That's right.
to Eno Vino. Is it Eno Vino?
I thought it was Eno Vino.
It sounds better, but I've also heard people call it Eno Vino. Eno Vino.
Eno Vino.
Eno Vino. See, that even sounds better than Eno Vino.
I think Eno Vino is the agreed upon pronunciation, but we should have asked.
We should have asked.
Had another cocktail at the bar.
And ceviche.
Yes, the ceviche.
Yes.
That was great.
It was also fresh, delightful. And then we went to Heritage.
Yeah, we had to really round out the whole bar hopping experience.
And you can too if you come visit Lake City Books.
Within a 1-block radius of our store are these fabulous restaurants and cocktails.
But we had
never go to.
Right. I try and go to Heritage because of the deviled eggs.
Man, those deviled eggs were fabulous.
They were so good.
We have kind of a thing about deviled eggs. So we were like, well, it's your 1-year anniversary. We have to get it.
Yes.
Like we're a couple that has little traditions already. So
yes, we are.
And it was fabulous.
They were so good. I can't even remember. There were 3 different kinds that we split in half. So we each got a bite.
I remember some of them. One of them was the stir fry. Or it was like
pork belly on top.
Yeah. It was called like pork belly stir fry or something. But yeah, it had like crispy pork belly on top.
That was my favorite.
And I don't even remember what the other stir fry part of it was, like what was mixed in, but it was fabulous. Yep. One was like pink.
Yeah, because it has
like
like
beets.
beets. Yep.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they have
And
great.
that was our last stop because we were full and a little tipsy.
Yeah. After the final round of appetizers and drinks at Heritage, we were like,
We did have an ambition to go somewhere else, but that didn't happen.
It was time to call it at that point.
Next time.
Mm-hmm.
Next time.
Can't blow it all.
And then you still had to work. And then your show, I went to your show, but by then my social battery was really low, so I didn't stick around until you were done. But you were awesome.
Thank you.
It was so much fun to see all those women doing different artists, and I was so impressed by everybody.
Yeah, this was the Respect show at the Majestic Madison, and it featured the Big Payback as like the backing band, and they're so fabulous, and I love them. Fabulous is my word of the day, evidently. I'm going to just
lean into it.
That's what we're describing things as, and I'm using it. And yeah, it was a really, really fun show.
I did see your parents.
Yeah.
But they had a whole group of people that
it was like a giant Molly fan club.
Yes.
Over 70.
Yes.
The over 70 fan club.
It was fantastic.
It was a huge amount of people.
Yeah.
They're very supportive.
They are very supportive. We love them.
Yeah, that was a busy weekend. This weekend I was happy that things were more chill because we're going to have a busy couple of weeks coming up and months and all the holiday season.
Yes.
It's just kind of going to ramp up. We'll have lots of events in October, which you'll hear about more in the future. But our first big thing coming up is Banned Book Week. Should we use that to talk about what are we reading and talk about our banned books?
We should. You want to go first? You've got
Sure.
some tabs going on.
Oh, yeah. I'm learning that in order to talk about books, I should tab things so I can remember what I want to talk about. Here's my hot take. I read A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle, which was written in 1962, I want to say. 1962, originally. I had never read this before. It was kind of a blind spot. It wasn't something I read growing up. I kind of skipped a lot of middle grade because I was reading very inappropriately mature literature at a very young age where I probably didn't understand it, but I just liked the language. I was reading like the entire Sir Arthur Conan Doyle complete Sherlock Holmes when I was like 12, which is probably when I should have been reading A Wrinkle in Time, and I didn't. And so I just like skipped past a lot of these kind of quote unquote classics. And like I was like Harry Potter wasn't a thing really, you know, like I some of that stuff, I was a little too old for that also. So I didn't hit that age where everyone was reading Harry Potter or everyone was reading Percy Jackson. Like, I don't know. I was in kind of this weird in-between space. So when I was reading A Wrinkle in Time for the first time in 2024 as a 38-year-old woman, it missed me. I'm not going to lie. And it also is very dated in a lot of its language. And I'm curious, so I haven't watched the movie yet.
I was going to ask you because we were talking about it.
We were, and I want to watch it soon while I still have the book fresh in my brain because I'm sure they update a lot of the more problematic like language of just how these like kids talk to each other, specifically how the boys talk to this girl who's supposedly the lead. And they literally everyone's like calling each other a moron. This like Calvin boy who's the basketball player that they're all, I mean, I don't know that I have to describe the plot of A Wrinkle in Time, but maybe I will. It's like a little girl whose father is a scientist and he goes missing. And then she has like a little brother who's like clairvoyant or something. And she's like not cool and she's not doing good in school and she thinks she's like ugly and boring and whatever, but she's really good at math and she's really smart parents. And she meets in the woods these 3 witches with her little brother, and the witches are like, hey, we have to go save your father. And she's like, what? Why? And then they just leave. And they also take with them this other boy who they were hanging out with in the woods, who's like this like popular basketball player character. So this popular basketball player character, Calvin, literally calls her a moron, calls the little brother a moron, always talks to her like good girl, says good girl to her. They're like the same age, supposedly.
Okay.
It's just like this 19, and again, so this is not, I'm not saying it's like It's a product of the time. This is
Yeah.
how people talked. This is how I get it. But then it just, when you're reading it for the first time and it's 60 years later, this is just like not relatable content. And she has very little agency, I would say, in the book, other than like one moment at the end where she's thrust into this position and then all of a sudden decides that, oh, love is the key all along. And she has been able to figure that out by herself somehow, despite never getting to make any decisions along this whole magical space and time journey she's on. She's just like thrown, and she's also crying and screaming the whole time and throwing tantrums. And everyone's just trying to calm her down. And she's just like, what's going on? Why is it like this? This is the vibe that I'm getting. I'll show you. Why did you let this get me? My daddy wasn't there for me. Like, there are and it says like,
Whiny.
she cried, she sobbed. It's just very like whiny, screaming behavior. And I was like, I don't get why this was so popular. I think the world building is cool. I was trying to picture it as like a movie, and I'm like, okay, there's like beasts and there's other planet, but the naming is so bad. The evil thing is called the evil, or the black thing, or it, capital IT. And I was like, there's not like I don't know. Again, it's like a real fantasy reader. I was like, you couldn't come up with like a name for it, or I don't know. And I think it's supposed to be abstract such that it is like really accessible to kids. I didn't get it. It didn't feel like I was learning that, oh, love is the thing that's important for us to overcome tyranny, which is supposedly the theme of the book.
Yeah.
It felt like a whiny little girl who's thrust into these weird situations, and then in the end, everything works out okay. I don't know. I didn't. That's my hot take. I didn't like A Wrinkle in Time. However, I think it's a lot of it due to context. And I'm very curious to watch the movie because I think Ava DuVernay, the black female director of this age, would be able to take that story and make it something more relatable to our times, and maybe like process some of those same things they're trying to talk about in the book in a more modern way that's less problematic about how it talks to women. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just my quick thought. I will also say we should talk about, since this was a banned book for a long time, I was trying to really think about that as I was reading it. Like, why was this banned?
Yeah.
It seems like and I did a little research reading into why it had been banned previously. In the 90s, it was a really popular banned book. It was like one of the top 10 banned books according to the ABA for a while, or probably the ALA, the American Library Association. And it was in the top 100 for a while, but now it's dropped off and it's not really banned as much anymore. I think it has to do with, there are like straight up Bible quotes in this, and it's the witches who are saying the Bible quotes. And I think that is the problematic part for people, is that there was like the evangelical movement of the 90s that didn't like the mixing of that occult witchy type character and all of this like science fiction that's happening in the story with religion, which they are talking about. They talk about Jesus at one point as like one of the clairvoyant type people that had these magical witch powers, and start quoting it like, obviously, listen to this quote from Jesus from the Bible. He must have been one of those witches. And so I think that's probably why it was banned. But I think that's not as much a concern anymore in today's world. Now people are more focused on banning, unfortunately, queer voices and other diverse voices, and not as worried about like Jesus being portrayed perfectly.
Yeah. I read A Wrinkle in Time probably in 5th grade, and I remember loving it. But we also had this conversation with Laura Ann Bird last week about revisiting those middle grade books that we grew up loving and not having the same reaction to them. So I'm going to guess that I'm going to have a similar reaction to you if I were to pick this up again. But I don't want to take that away from my younger self.
Yeah, I'd say you can leave it there because in
Exactly.
context of reading it as your younger self,
Right.
it was good or helpful or got you excited about a story, and that's great. But it's like not something I think nostalgia would have a big part of it too, maybe, and then you'd still like it or remember the feelings you had.
Sure.
I feel like I have that about books I'll reread or movies I'll rewatch, and I'm like, Oh, I never noticed any of this stuff because you just have this kind of like wash of nostalgia over things.
Yeah.
Well, and that was the other thing I was thinking. And the reason I wanted to pick it up was after talking to Laura Bird about middle grade, I was so inspired to like revisit that genre. And I frankly liked her middle grade better.
Yeah.
And I have read other middle grade that I do really like. And I think she really tapped into something that she said in the interview last week, which was it has to be about the kids and what they're doing and their choices and their agency. And then it just made me notice it so much in this book
Yeah.
that she was being tossed around by these supernatural creatures. They're not telling her anything. They're not giving her any choices. And I was like, oh, that's, I think, part of why I'm not liking it as much.
Totally.
Anyway, and maybe that's what it felt more like to be a kid in the 60s. I mean, if you talk to your parents, my parents talk about that all the time of like, nobody gave us any choices. We were put in a car and taken to a place and or sat in front of a whatever like this. There were no choices and options. And it wasn't like, what do you want to do today, child? You know,
Yeah.
you did what you were told to do. So maybe, again, it's of a different time, and a
Right.
different era. And I just didn't get it.
Yeah.
Didn't like it.
Fair enough.
Had a hard time reading it. Even though it's short and middle grade, I was like, I don't care. I don't care what's happening to these characters because they're so whiny and annoying.
Yeah. My book is quite a 180 from yours.
I know. Let's get into that. I've talked enough about this Wrinkle in Time.
So my book is Night by Elie Wiesel. It is a hard book to talk about. Like,
It is.
he was 14 years old when he first went into a concentration camp, and it's what happened to him and the gradual taking away of his life in a really sad way. But it's also so matter of fact that it makes it consumable. I read it in a day because it's riveting, although it is tragic.
Mm-hmm.
But I also read it in college, so I feel like having that, already having an experience with it was easier to revisit it,
Knowing what's going to happen.
knowing what's going to happen.
He's writing a memoir,
He's writing,
so you know
he's
he
going to
survives.
survive.
Right.
But the people his family that he lost, and there's some anecdotes about years later seeing people that he once met in the concentration camp, and there's a woman that he sits down with and has coffee in Paris, and they reminisce, which is such a strange word for them to use, but like, what else would you call it? And this was also banned, less so now, but more recently, they tried to ban it in Iowa along with 450 other books. A judge chose not to do that because it's such a important and pivotal book. And the beginning of this, there's a foreword by Wiesel, and he talks about he felt this was his duty to write this book, make sure that this was never forgotten, that we don't turn our back when something like this is happening in the world. And this is a new translation that was done by his wife that was published in 2006. It's kind of refreshing it, and he talks about how he chose to do that because of how the Holocaust is taught today and how pivotal, like the Diary of Anne Frank is taught. And he wants that to continue to be something that is learned by children and adults and not shied away from. Because if we don't remember, we repeat it. So there's very poignant statements like that in here. And then at the end of it, there's also his Nobel Prize speech that he gave in 1986. And it really echoes those same sentiments. And he, like every person, those thousands of people that he saw in the concentration camps that he went through, like, I see them every day. I will never forget them. And the burden of that is so strong, the way he writes it, like on every page. You can tell he remembers every person. So it was hard.
It is hard.
At one point, I felt a duty to educate myself as much as I could about this, as we all should.
Right.
It's done in a way that doesn't feel like it's exploiting the situation.
Right. Well, and the resurgence of Holocaust deniers and Nazism in corners of media and culture today in 2024 is horrendous. And
Absolutely.
books like this are some of the absolutely most important books not to ban because of that. And I think, okay, so we'll go on record as saying we don't think any books should be banned.
Right.
Even in terms of a public access to books and what people and even children can access, I absolutely think I believe in free speech, and books are a form of speech and knowledge and should be available to anyone at any time. I think private bookstores, to tip our hand, you can curate what you want. Yeah, and I am going to promote Elie Wiesel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have Night here, and there are stories like that we do need to push forward. And that's where I feel like that Iowa ban was, that judge was so smart and courageous to say that when we're looking at like a giant number of books, what was it, like 450?
Mm-hmm.
And when he saw some of them, and one of them being Night, saying we can't ban this quote unquote category of books just because I can look at that single example and say that book should not be banned. That book is too important for people to have access to. And I was so happy that happened, because there are book banning legislations in other states that have gone the other way.
Right.
And
and it goes to show what an education you can get from stories like this.
That's right.
That impact our society on a major level.
That's right. I remember reading Night in high school, I think, is when I read it. And it's one of those books that I do think everyone should read at some point in their lives. And I don't think there's a too early
right
to read it. We'll get into it when we start talking about banned books and what's been banned from some of these public schools and public libraries, because I don't know, like, again, I was reading stuff that I shouldn't have been reading.
Highly inappropriate things.
At 10 and 12.
Same.
And it only, you're not going to get all of it, but it's not going to do what, I don't know what these parents are afraid of it doing.
Right.
Turn your kid gay? Turn them, like, what are they afraid of?
Yeah.
Is what I don't understand. I think even reading something really terrible and right wing could still just offer you something to get to know another viewpoint, or to understand that there are people that feel that way in the world, which is a good thing to know.
Yeah.
Even, you should be aware of everyone's, views around you in your community and in society. And we can't just live in our bubbles and read the same things and only talk about the same topics and have exactly the same opinions.
Right.
That's not how the world works.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a complicated topic, and maybe I'm saying a controversial viewpoint, but I just don't believe in banning anything. And I don't believe in parents, I believe, have a right to say, like, I don't think my children should read this or watch this or do this. I don't have children.
Mm-hmm.
If I did, maybe I would feel differently, but also I feel like I'd be one of those parents that would be like, well, let's talk about this thing.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to go let you watch this movie that's really explicit if it's not educational. But there's a difference also between reading something like Night that has terrible violence and, mass murder, genocide, and horrible living conditions and treatment of people and rape. And there's something different between that and reading like Sarah J. Maas.
Right.
There's a difference. And I don't think either of them should be banned, but I'm going to fight for my child to be able to read Night.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to fight for Sarah J. Maas to be in the library as hard. Okay, yeah, maybe I will, just because I think everything should be in the library. But
the education behind the two.
Yeah, there's a big difference.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just crazy that everything is lumped together. And like, that's where the parent decision making can come in.
Right.
Where you can say there's value in my child learning about Night.
Mm-hmm. As a parent, as long as they're reading,
Right?
Like,
That's what I would say.
That's the big thing.
They're not just like watching porn on their phones.
Right.
Which is a thing they can
all do.
at any time. That's the other crazy part about it. Like that book bans are coming back, and it's like, you think your kid's problem is that he's going to go to the library and accidentally read about like a consensual sexual act between two teenage boys, and that's like going to ruin him? But do you know what he can do?
Access online?
What are you talking about? Like, it's just a crazy fear to me.
Yes.
And it's just like, oh, well, I can
It's
control this
misplaced,
one thing.
for
It's
sure.
very misplaced. They're seeking control, and it's like, well, just like have intelligent conversations with children about sex and gender and
the world around
politics
them
and the Holocaust and exactly, the world and all these terrible things that have happened and all the great things that have happened and about different kinds of people who are also allowed to live in this world.
Right.
Anyway, I feel
We're
very
passionate
strongly,
about banned books.
We are. And Wisconsin is unfortunately a popular state for book banning attempts.
Yeah.
Not so much in like Dane County and Milwaukee County. However, I've talked to a Dane County librarian who said, like, yeah, we fight removal requests all the time in our libraries, our public libraries, of people wanting to have books removed. However, we have, I think, more resources in places like the large Dane County Public Library System and the Madison Public Library Systems to fight those and to push back. Whereas smaller counties, smaller school districts might not have those resources. So I was just reading, there's some data on PEN America, which I would encourage everyone. They're one of the leading organizations that track and fight book bans. So PEN America is a really great thing to Google if you want to go learn more about this. And we'll have some links in our show notes too for how you can learn more about what's being banned and why. And I was also reading the spreadsheet and some of the work by Taslyn Magnuson, who is a Wisconsinite who has been starting to track over the last 3 years all book bans across the country and has this giant spreadsheet that's also available online. And she just tries to keep an eye on all of this and to aggregate data to just show people transparency of book bans. So I went and looked and filtered by Wisconsin. And I can tell you that the two of the biggest counties in Wisconsin that have book bans in place or who are trying to fight these book bans, or maybe losing the fight against book bans, I should say, are Walworth County and Waukesha County. And it is their school districts and their public libraries who both have a lot of bans. I can also tell you that based on what PEN America and Taslyn are both saying, that it is often just single people who submit mass banning requests for hundreds of books, usually without coherent arguments, just like taking lists from these right-wing organizations like Moms for America, I think is one, and other, they're like grassroots, quote unquote, but trying to spread to other right-wing conservative people across the country to get these specific books banned in more places. And then they do mass submissions. They have like form letters that people send in. And if you're a smaller school district and you just have like one little librarian trying to get a handle on these, it can be really hard to try and fight all of that pressure coming at you. So, because you don't have a lot of resources. So anyway, I just wanted to shed some light on that in terms of Wisconsin. There are book bans happening here, and we should do everything we can, show up and vote in school board elections, try to help get those books maybe in free little libraries around the community. Like, do what you can to promote those stories that are trying to be banned, because they don't deserve to be. And especially when you look at what they are.
Mm-hmm. I know it should be mandatory that you have to read the book before you can request it to be banned.
Right. And it should be, I don't know, if anything, I feel like it's like when someone wants to ban a book, that probably means there's something you should read in there.
Right.
For example, Handmaid's Tale.
Such a great
banned.
book.
And it's like these dystopian, it's almost like a meta version of itself when dystopian futuristic books are being banned because they might, like, quote unquote, give people bad ideas. And it's like to rise up for freedom. Those are the ideas. To like fight for a woman's right to choose, what happens to her body. Hunger Games is banned in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
In some school districts. I think it's probably one of the Walworth County ones. And it's like, okay, yep, there's childhood death, but like death is a thing.
Right.
We're trying to protect our children from knowing about death. If they're old enough to read Hunger Games, they probably know that like their goldfish has died or something, right?
Right. It's not something they can hide from forever. We're doing our own part to combat banning books at Lake City Books. Banned Book Week is September 22nd through the 28th, and we are offering 10% off of our selection of banned books. So come to the store, buy banned books, read banned books.
Share them with your friends. Support those authors, for sure.
Absolutely.
Last year during Banned Books Week 2023, I did a couple events with the Wanakee Public Library and worked with them to have a couple authors in. And one of them I just wanted to shout out. We still carry his book, and he just gave the most beautiful presentation about it. And that was Mike Curato and his YA graphic novel called Flamer. And it's about a young boy who's going to a summer camp, and it's a really cool looking graphic novel with really great art. And he's an artist, and he designed it all himself. And it's like a semi-autobiographical tale of him, but fictionalized. And this young boy is like going to camp, and he is queer and kind of just discovering that, but getting bullied relentlessly. And it's this story. Everyone in the room, while he was giving this presentation, you could hear a pin drop. He was such a fabulous speaker. He had a whole like interactive PowerPoint he was giving, and he's also talking about his own experiences as this bullied boy and how this book that he has written, which is explicitly to help people to not ever feel that way and to help prevent childhood death and childhood bullying, has helped so many people. He's heard about it from so many people that it literally saved their lives to read this book. And it is also one of the #1 banned books in the US.
Wild.
And so he was talking about how there's this extra, like he talked about it from his own experience, which is why I say support these authors, because it will always stick with me, how he cried in front of us saying, it hurts my soul. It hurts my legacy and it hurts this positive thing that I'm trying to put out there, as, controversial maybe as the subject matter is. It's such an important story for people to hear. And if it's not an important story for you to hear, because you're not like, then who cares? Leave it alone. Let it be there.
You don't have to read it.
You don't have to read it. But let it be there for the people who need it. And why would you try to ban it? And it was so moving. And I just always I always think of Mike Curato, and I thank him for really opening my eyes to the effect on the authors and people who are missing out on that book. I feel like he just gave such a eloquent presentation against banning books, against about what the impact is on an emotional level, that there is a child who needs that story. And how could you ban it? Not every child needs that story, but the ones that do are at the most risk. And so let them have this thing at the library, which is often a safe space for people who need it. So anyway, we sell Flamer here all year round. All the banned books that we're going to have on display during Banned Book Week are books that we carry all year round. We are just pulling them out and showing them to you and offering you 10% off during this week to help promote them. But these are books that we really believe in and think are important stories. So
yeah, we're also kicking off Banned Book Week on Sunday the 22nd with a presentation of our own.
It's going to be at 1:00 on Sunday, and it's actually going to be a member of the WisDems team coming to talk about the impact of banning books, and specifically in Wisconsin, what that impact is, and talk about how elections are important in that cycle and breaking the cycle of banning books, because, and especially local elections like school board elections. So yeah, that'll be 1 p.m. on September 22nd. I hope you'll come out and join us, and you can buy some banned books. We'll also be collecting books for Madison Reading Project, which we also do all year round, but we'll have some extra bins out, and we'll be offering 10% off any banned children's books that you want to purchase to donate to Madison Reading Project.
All right. That it?
That's it. I'm glad we had the fun happy hour part, or the work anniversary part at the beginning, because the banned books discussion is kind of a downer.
It got intense. Yeah. Passionate.
Definitely. And there's a lot of people more educated than us about this out there, and there's a lot of places you can learn. This is just our take, of course. So we'll link in the show notes some of our favorite resources about the impact of banning books.
All right. We'll see you at the bookstore.
Bye.
Bye.